Student journalists play a vital role in their communities, often serving as a check on their academic institutions or finding stories that might escape other members of the media, especially as local news outlets struggle to stay open. But too often, student journalists are expected to act as publicists rather than journalists, and when they stray from the misplaced expectations of administrators and sometimes their fellow students, student journalists all too often face consequences. While student journalists know how to investigate developments at their universities and make their campus communities better informed, they might not know what to do when their efforts are stymied by administrators seeking to interfere with their reporting. So the Foundation for Individual Rights and Education is here to help with our report, Under Pressure, the Warning Signs of Student Newspaper Censorship. The first warning sign we'll look at is defunding and derecognition, which occurs when student governments, administrators, or even fellow students target the funds, resources, or formal recognition student newspapers often need to operate. Student newspapers at campuses like Texas State University, the University of California, San Diego, and Wesleyan University have had to fight to preserve their funding in recent years after publishing unpopular content. The second warning sign to look out for is an investigation. A university doesn't always need to punish student journalists to control what they print. Sometimes the threat of punishment implied by an investigation is enough to pressure students into staying silent rather than risking harm to their studies or future careers. But students should know that universities don't have a blank check to investigate them, even if they don't result in formal punishment. The next warning sign we'll look at is theft and destruction. Let's make one thing clear. In the internet age, it's almost impossible to make a story disappear. But that hasn't stopped targets of unflattering coverage from trying it. Although newspaper theft rarely accomplishes its perpetrator's goal, but it still can be a thorn in the side of student journalists forced to cope with the loss of their time, money, and resources. At one campus, Florida Atlantic University, student paper The University Press experienced a number of thefts in 2010, 2016, and 2019. The fourth warning sign is one of the most obvious: outright censorship demands. Though they should know better, that hasn't stopped administrators at a number of universities from unashamedly demanding that student journalists censor their work or avoid covering certain topics to preserve the university's reputation. For example, the University of Tulsa found itself on FIRE's 2016 10 Worst list. TU's Director of Marketing and Communications warned the collegiate staff against publishing anything that the university deemed to be confidential because it could violate university policies. Another warning sign to watch out for is prior review. Prior review and prior restraint are among the most noxious forms of censorship. The former occurs when administrators enjoy the power to review material before it's communicated or published. The latter when they are able to remove material before it can be published. Prior restraint is so frowned upon that the Supreme Court of the United States has observed that the chief purpose of the First Amendment is to prevent prior restraint. The next sign is pressure on advisors. At a public university or private institution that makes free speech commitments, administrators are prohibited from taking action to control, chill, or punish student media content because they dislike what they publish. That includes retaliatory action taken against advisors, often faculty members, who counsel student journalists on writing, editing, and publishing their work. But that hasn't stopped universities from punishing advisors for doing their jobs, instead of turning student journalists into university mouthpieces. After punishing the advisor to the floor alla for the paper's reporting, the University of North Alabama earned a well-deserved censure from the College Media Association, a protest edition from the paper, and a spot on FIRE's 2019 10 Worst list. Finally, we'll look at media relations policies, which stymie student journalists' ability to report. These are restrictive policies universities craft that frustrate the ability of faculty members to speak with the media, effectively imposing a gag order. Student journalists, who are increasingly important members of the local media too, have found themselves impacted by such policies. In 2012, Ithaca College students even had to protest the adoption of a new policy requiring student media to submit all interview requests for all administrators, including the college's president, through the Ithaca Office of Media Relations. Now you know how to spot threats to your rights. But what should you do when you encounter them? First, develop a concrete understanding of your rights, whether at a private or public university, and the policies and safeguards that protect them at your institution. If your university does not offer policies that protect student journalists or maintains policies that do the opposite, be proactive and advocate for policy reform at your college before it's necessary. FIRE can help with that. The next step is to document every meeting and correspondence, like emails, letters, and phone calls, shared between newspaper staff and university administrators when you believe that you're experiencing an act of censorship. Documentation can be vital in exposing inappropriate or unconstitutional interference with students' rights. Finally, contact the Foundation for Individual Rights and Education when efforts to censor your newspaper or its staff are underway or have been threatened. we've defended the rights of thousands of students and may be able to help you too. Read FIRE's full report, Under Pressure, the warning signs of student newspaper censorship, to learn more.